Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second Facebook Live. We're gonna wait some minutes for people to join us. So please start leaving your comments and give us a like. In the meantime, remember that we're gonna start at 10 a.m. So please welcome, and we're gonna wait, as I said before, some minutes to start. All right? Thank you. Don't forget to leave us your comments, like with your names, institutions that you belong to, and if you're a student, a teacher, or if you represent or you're part of or a member of a different institution. So please leave us your comments below. All right. Good morning, Maria Ruth and Angela Belandia. Mauricio, how are you? Please give us your likes, and if you can help us like sharing this post so that you other people can see this workshop. All right. Good morning, Maria Ruth, Victor, Hector. Thanks for joining us. So we're gonna wait some more minutes, and then we're gonna start with the workshop. All right. Yes, Maria Ruth, it has been difficult for all of us, this quarantine thing, but hopefully things are gonna come back to normal soon. Please let me know if you can hear me well, if there are not like if there's no interference, and remember that sometimes, because many people are connected, maybe you will face like some connection problems. So just like be patient, and let us know if there is no interference. All right.
Bueno, tú ahí eres la ficha, ¿no? O sea, la idea es que tú contengas por chat toda la vaina para que este hombre nos pueda concentrar ahí en el streaming.
Okay, people.
¿Listo?
So I think it's 10 a.m. already, so we're gonna start. First, we want to welcome you all on behalf of the Secretary of Education, the second district plan that belongs to the Science, Technology, and Educational Media Management at the Secretary of Education. We want to welcome you all to this second Facebook Live. Remember that this is like all included as part of the third district spelling bee strategy or event that will be held this year, hopefully, and also as part of the Aprende en Casa or Learned at Home strategy that the Secretary of Education is promoting. All right. So that being said, our workshop today is on let's practice pronunciation. All right. So this workshop is intended to give you activities, strategies, different material that you can use with your students. Uh, like, well, we know what the situation is right now, and for that we want to share this all this material with you and show you how you can integrate the third district spelling bee material, the word lists, and all this material that we share with you as part of the learn at home strategy, so that you can keep in touch with your students and they can start learning the vocabulary and getting ready for the spelling bee once we come back. All right. uh, Good. We're gonna be mostly speaking in English, so because, well, this is about pronunciation, so we're gonna be speaking most of the time in English. Well, you let me know if there are some things that probably are not well understood. Uh, when we tackle topics for primary school, maybe I'm gonna switch a little bit into Spanish, but most of the workshop is gonna be given in English. All right. So to start, well, we want to talk about the importance of teaching and learning pronunciation. All right, and why did we start our workshops with pronunciation? Well, basically because when you talk to students, or like when people or Colombians, we talk to Colombians and ask them if they know English, the question that we often have is like, no, if you ask me to read, I can read English well. If you ask me to write, I can write it well. But when it is about like speaking in public or having a conversation, no, I'm not gonna be like willing to do that, right? So it's very common that people say this, like, no, profe, no me ponga a hablar, póngame a leer, póngame a escribir, pero hablar no, porque me da mucha pena, for example. Those are like some comments that we have from students, right? And basically one of the main reasons people don't feel comfortable speaking in English is because they are afraid of making because they think that they are not going to be understood, right? And these problems are most of the times because we don't have the opportunity to interact in English, uh, or speak in English. You know that in South America, all countries or most of the countries speak Spanish, and we don't have that necessity that probably in Europe people have, no, because they all speak different languages, so they feel like they need to have a common language to communicate, and that's where English takes place. But in South America, this is like something that probably uh, with all this globalization is changing, but in the past it was like, well, we didn't feel that necessity. And what is the main problem? That when we're learning pronunciation, or when we pronounce words in English or phrases, or when we start communicating, our mother tongue, or native language, in this case Spanish, interferes, or the pronunciation rules, or pronunciation Spanish rules interfere in when we produce the foreign language or the second language that we're learning, right? So what happens? So when we learn a foreign language, we're likely to speak it filtered through our first language pronunciation. Most of us tend to use our native pronunciation rules, and often the grammar, no, on the new language. So that is one of the main problems that we have. Our our mother tongue interferes in what we produce. Yes, and this is something normal, no? Because when you listen to a person that is from Russia, or an Asian person, or an African person, or a Mexican person, Argentinian, or like from other countries, South America, it's very likely to notice that the mother tongue or the accent that the person has is interfering, no? And this is like one of the main problems that we have, but that we want to sound like native speakers, but that is not like the purpose of learning pronunciation in this case. uh, Another important aspect is pronunciation is definitely the biggest thing that people notice when you're speaking English, right? So you can live without advanced vocabulary. You can use simple words to say what you want to say. You can use simple grammar, but there is no such thing as simple pronunciation. So you can communicate with people with a reduced number of words. You can use simple grammar to communicate, and people will understand what you want to transmit, or the message can be understood. But but if you are not producing all these phrases, if you are not producing this vocabulary with the right or with the correct pronunciation, then people won't understand what you're saying, right? And that's when the interference starts. And then we will have this common question that we have, like, say what, or what are you trying to say, right? So there is no such thing as simple pronunciation. If the pronunciation is poor, neither grammar nor vocabulary would help you. All right. So that's why it is important for us as teachers or English teachers, and students as well, to give like more relevance to the pronunciation. So the question here would be, and if you can share some of your comments below, like how important is pronunciation in your lessons? Are you teaching pronunciation patterns, rules? Are you practicing pronunciation with your students in class? So that is one of of the questions that we have for you today. So please leave us your comments below. And well, we're gonna start like sharing some funny stories, or maybe situation or embarrassing situations that people face when they are not, or when communication is not effective because of pronunciation, right? So we want you to share maybe an experience that you faced, maybe when once one in an opportunity that you traveled, or you had to the chance to travel to an English speaking country, and and maybe you tried to communicate with people, and you were not being understood, or they were trying to communicate with you, and then it was not clear because of pronunciation patterns. This is like very common, no? When you travel, or if you haven't traveled, maybe if you had the chance to speak to a native English speaker here in Colombia, and then you started like interacting, and then there were problems, and the most common question was like, sorry, say what, or what are you trying to say? So this is like a very common situation that we face, no? When we travel, or when we face communication in a real situation. So please start sharing your stories below. I'm gonna share mine. Back in 2005, I had the chance to live in the States. I lived in a little town uh, named Gurnee, Illinois, and I was working for an amusement park there. I was like working at a cafe in a water park inside the amusement park, and then this little kid approaches me. I was like working at the cashier, and I was taking orders, and then this little kid approaches me and goes like, uh, "Got a bag?" He was saying like this, and I was like, "What?" And then the kid goes again and again like, "Got a bag?" And I was like, sorry, I cannot understand what you're trying to say. And then the little kid was surprised, because he was like, but what happens? I mean, uh, he probably didn't understand that I was not from the States. So for me, it was like very difficult, that situation. I just like gave up. I was like, sorry, I'm from Colombia. I don't know what you're trying to say. Can you please speak slowly? But then the kid just ran away. He was like, he disappeared. And I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And it was a very uncomfortable situation, right? And then after some minutes, and the kid's father, huge guy, comes to me, and he was like very upset. He was telling me like, hey, why aren't you giving my kid what he wants? You're not like being helpful. And so I was like really embarrassed, and I was trying to explain to him that I was like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what your kid was trying to say. And he was like, so what you mean is that he's not speaking English properly? And I was like, well, no, the thing is that I don't understand because I'm not from the States, and he's speaking too fast. So maybe if you explain to me what he wants. Well, after some minutes, he pronounced the word plastic. He said plastic bag. And then I understood that what the kid wanted was a plastic bag, right? So he was saying like, got a bag? And if you think about the way that that we would ask for a plastic bag at a supermarket or at an amusement park in this case, would well, the grammar that we're taught, like the pronunciation patterns that we're taught, is like, do you have a plastic bag, or can I have, or may I have a plastic bag, please? But in real environments, well, people break the grammar rules. People speak with different intonation. People have different accents, right? It's not the same to listen to a person that is from Texas to I mean, and listen to a person that is from New York or from California or from another state, or listen to a person from Sydney, Australia, or from a person from Dublin in Ireland, and a person from London or Manchester or Wales. So people have different accents. People speak with different intonations. So this was my experience. After some time, it was really embarrassed because we had no plastic bags at the place where I was working at. So the guy was really upset because after like 15 minutes, I told him like, sorry, we don't have plastic bags for you. So it was like a really embarrassing situation. So please leave us your comments. Let us know about those anecdotes that maybe you have faced trying to communicate with people in a real environment, or maybe with an English native speaker here in Colombia. All right, so don't forget to leave us your comments below, telling your experiences, or letting us know about your experiences. Good people. So we're sharing funny stories, or in this case the word, or anecdotas, no, anecdotas, about these misunderstandings, or mispronunciation situations in which the message was not sent properly. And let's think about this word, anecdota, right? When you see the word in English, it looks pretty similar to the way that we're writing in Spanish. It looks very similar to the maybe the sounds that we produce in Spanish. But what happens when a person is learning this word for the first time? Let's think about a true beginner, a person that is like learning this word for the first time, and how probably to that question would be anecdote, right? Maybe the person, the sounds of this word in that way, and maybe because the stress of this word in Spanish is in the second syllable, right? Anecdota, right? So likely a person would say something like anecdote, right? Or maybe the person would pronounce the last e sound in this word. No, anecdote, for example, could be the pronunciation that the person might produce. So how can a person know how this word is pronounced properly, right? Because if the person doesn't know how to produce this sound properly, and here we have the correct pronunciation, that would be anecdote. So that's where problems start. No, if the person doesn't learn how to produce this word, or how to pronounce this word properly from the very beginning, the person would continue producing or pronouncing this word in the wrong way, right? So important. This is an example on how the mother tongue pronunciation rules, in this case Spanish pronunciation, in the way that we communicate. Okay, so English is, it's like probably, like for us Spanish speakers, or maybe a person who speaks French as a native language, or Italian, or other languages, English is like a very complicated language when it comes to pronunciation, right? And it is because we have like many sounds that don't exist in Spanish, that are produced in English, or that exist in English. And we have a poem was written, and to explain to pronounce words in English, or to learn English pronunciation rules. No, so this is like the first part of the poem. It says, apparently a Frenchman trying to the verses said that he would prefer 6 months of hard labor to reading 6 lines aloud of this poem. And here you have the first 10 lines. All right, let's do this exercise. Try to read this poem with like the English you know. Try to read this poem, right? And you will notice that this is really difficult, no, to read this poem, and that there are many words within this poem that are similar but have different pronunciation, uh, or different sounds, no matter how similar they look, right? So we're gonna do this exercise, and here I'm gonna try to read it as as well as I can, but let's start. It says, "Dearest creature in creation, study English pronunciation. I will teach you in my verse sounds like corpse, course, horse, and worse. I will keep you, Susie, busy, make your head with heat grow dizzy. Tyranny your dress will tear, so shall I. Oh, hear my prayer. Just compare heart, beard, and herd, dice and diet, lord and word, sword and sword, retain and Britain. Mind the latter how it's written." All right. So let's it's difficult now if you try to read it. I had to check many of the pronunciation sounds that you have in most of these words, and even if you're an advanced level learner, you might have you might find this difficult, no, to produce these sounds, because sometimes, for example, in the case of heart, beard, and herd, then we say like, well, but they have the same vowels, no? Why they are pronounced in a different way? And then you start like questioning yourself, like, oh my God, what's wrong? Why can I produce these sounds? How didn't I know that this word was pronounced this way, or this other way, right? And it is and this is like an important thing, that as teachers we have to learn pronunciation patterns. We have to practice pronunciation on a regular basis. Otherwise, we're students, we are the models of our students. We're the pronunciation model for our students. If we are not producing the sounds properly, if we are not pronouncing words in the right way or with the correct intonation, or we are not linking phrases in the proper way, then students are going to start repeating or like following the patterns that we're producing. And if we're not doing it the right way, then they will learn the wrong way. Okay, so my invitation here for you teachers is like to go deep into pronunciation rules, to start exploring pronunciation, because this is going to be a way in which we as teachers are going to pronounce in a better way, but also we're gonna teach them and we're gonna feel more confident when teaching pronunciation to our students. All right. So here we have like some of the problems that we might face in English, no, or that we face in English when we are producing sounds. No, in this case we have the word or the letter S. All right, we have the letter S, and here we have some like 5 different ways in which we can produce the S or S sound in English. No, in Spanish we have letter S, and in most of the cases it is pronounced the same way. But what happens when it comes to English? So for example, the first sound we have in words like basic, past, say, right? But when it comes to words like rose or because, then the pronunciation changes, no? Rose, because, right? And then when it comes to words like sure or sugar, the pronunciation is quite different, right? So yes, it's like we cannot teach students to say sure. We know that the pronunciation is sure, but then they're going to be questioning themselves like, why is this sound produced in a different way? So for example, in words like casual, usually, television, right? So we have like another sound that is produced when this sound is in these words. And what about when it is muted, when we don't produce the sound? For example, in words like isle and island, all right? So then as Spanish speakers, I'm sure that all of us produced the sound Iceland when we were learning or when we saw this word for the first time, right? Or ice when we produced we saw this word for the first time, right? So if we don't teach pronunciation rules, if we don't like learn, let our students be familiar with these sounds or with these differences, then students are not going to produce the sounds properly, and they might face problems when interacting with in a real situation with a native speaker, right? Because probably when we are speaking among Colombians, we can like understand each other. But what if we're talking to a Japanese person? What if we're talking to a Russian person? Yes. So that's like the question that I want to leave you today, so that you can start exploring all these different sounds that are produced, and then you can replicate these different examples with your students. All right. So then the question, or the $1 million question, is like, should pronunciation be taught and acquired early at an early stage? Because well, most of the teachers complain and say like, no, but I'm teaching 8th grade and my students don't know the alphabet, don't know how to produce sounds. So I'm going to focus on grammar. I need them to learn how to read well. I need them to understand like listening comprehension exercises, right? Because they are not going to learn if they are 14 or 15 or yes. And what happens with adults? Yes, when we have students that are adults, and they say like the common phrase, no, like loro viejo no aprende a hablar, and then we are as teachers we're like, no, it doesn't matter how old are you, you can learn to speak in English, you can produce English sounds no matter how old you are. So in this case, for example, obviously it is going to be easier for us as teachers to teach pronunciation or to practice pronunciation, and for our students to learn pronunciation when they are at an early stage. Of course, if we start this process uh, in at the first grades, preschool, and the students start getting familiar with English sounds and speaking in English, then they will they will feel more confident when speaking, and they will like know that they are producing the sounds properly. All right. So the question here is like, or the answer to this question would be like, of course it is better if you start at an early stage, but it doesn't matter how old you are, you can learn how to produce English sounds properly if you start studying English at a late stage. All right. So please, teachers, start having your students produce sounds, speak in English, no matter how many mistakes they might have, but motivate them to forget about like, or like they sometimes feel like, no, I'm not going to speak in front of my partners because they're going to make fun of me, I don't feel confident. So this is like something that we need to start promoting in the classroom, so that the students feel less and less embarrassed when speaking in public. All right. So how do we learn pronunciation? So there are two ways in which we could learn pronunciation, or the most common ones that are naturally and by instruction. No. So naturally, when we are learning a language immersed in that environment, when we travel, when we have a like a long vacation time at English speaking country, or maybe we applied to an English class and then we were there immersed for 3 weeks or for 3 months, or different environments in which we can use the language all the time. This is a very difficult way because we don't have many spaces to speak English in a real environment, right? But the question is here, well, if we are using instruction more than like the way in which we are teaching or students are learning pronunciation in English, then how are we given instruction, right? So most of us here in Colombia learn English or learn pronunciation by instruction, right? So as I was saying before, we are taught, we follow the model of our teacher, we produce sounds the way the teacher does, right? And and we have an advantage. Like 20 or 30 years ago, it was very difficult to a person for a person to think about traveling or to be in contact with people from other countries. But now with technology, we can promote like this natural way of learning pronunciation in different environments. No, people have more access to TV series, people have more access to web pages, people have more access to YouTube or videos in which native English speakers are producing English in real environments. People have Facebook, people have the social media, all right? So in the past, maybe we had like more excuses, no? We were like, no, but this is very difficult to learn how to pronounce because I don't have the opportunity to practice English in real environments. But now we can like combine these two ways to instruct people. No, we can immerse them. We can have immersion in our classrooms, and we can combine it with instruction. Right? We can ask them to follow models. We can ask them to have role plays in which they interact with each other, and they follow those pronunciation rules or those pronunciation patterns that we are teaching them. All right, so we can make use of different material that we have. Remember that we have converging grounds. Remember that we have like different material that you can find on the internet. Okay, so we can create and combine these two ways of learning pronunciation in the classroom. So again, our invitation is for you to start like implementing, motivating your students to produce or to learn pronunciation in the classroom. All right. Well, now we're gonna start talking about the spelling bee, because well, it's very common that some teachers or even like some co-workers I have, they sometimes are like, but why is how the spelling bee is going to help your students to learn English if they are just learning isolated words, if they are just like repeating words, if they are just memorizing words, how this is going to be a strategy for them to learn English. And well, it makes sense that they think that way, no? Because we know that the way we spell words, it's very different to the way that we pronounce words or that we produce the sounds in those words. But this is exactly what the spelling bee is going to be useful for students. And it is because they are going to realize that the way we write a word, the letters that are part of that word are very different from the sounds that we, or not very different, but in some cases they are very different to the sounds that we produce when we pronounce the words that are written. All right, so it's like a way in which we can make our students or create awareness of our students on this aspect, no? How different it is to write a word and pronounce it in English, okay? And this is like the obstacle that we have to overcome, all right? So the spelling bee, for obvious reasons, we have interference by the way words are spelled, but this is a way in which we're going to motivate and we're going to teach pronunciation in a better way, all right? And also students are learning new vocabulary, and we're going to show you in a moment different strategies that you can use in the classroom so that students can start like learning pronunciation in different ways, no? Because what happens in here is that vocabulary is a core component of language proficiency and provides much of the basis of how well learners speak, listen, read, and write. So next time that teachers in your school say like, no, I'm not going to do, I'm not going to be part of this spelling bee thing because this is just like memorizing, this is just like producing. This is the answer that you're going to give them, right? Or maybe the principals, yes, they say like, no, but how we don't have time for this, this is not relevant for students to memorize words. So this is the answer that we're going to give them. There are many studies and research and papers written about the way a spelling bee can be beneficial for students to learn and for teachers to teach, right? And the main one is what I just read about vocabulary, and also because when we're teaching vocabulary and when we're teaching pronunciation, then students become better readers, students become better listeners, students become better writers, and students become more confident when speaking in public or when they interact, right? let's think about a situation. You're having a conversation with a native speaker, and then you don't know, or you forgot, or you don't know the word that you want to say. Yes. What happens in what situation? What do? Run away or just cry because you don't know the word? No, right? So you try to communicate. But what happens when students, or the main issue students have is like, no teacher, but I don't know words in English. How am I supposed to communicate if I don't know vocabulary, right? So spelling bee is a way in which we can teach students vocabulary, its pronunciation, but we're also teaching them to become better readers, listeners, writers, and speakers. All right? So keep this in mind, because we are, with the spelling bee, we are we're promoting like the learning of all these skills, all right? Not necessarily only memorizing vocabulary or learning words or learning spelling. Okay, so keep this in mind for next time that someone asks you about how effective it is to have a spelling bee at your school. Okay, the most important, and this is something that well, I've been part of spelling bees like for a long time. I've been like working with this for a long time, and I think that the best part of spelling bee is to see how students build their public speaking skills, is to see how students are not afraid of speaking in public. Yes, and let's think about this. When you're speaking in Spanish in front of 50 people, it is difficult, right? It is difficult to speak for us as teachers. No, maybe the first day of class we have 50 or 40 new people, or 25 new students, or in the case of public schools, like 40 or 45 students in the same classroom. And we are at the beginning, we are like, okay, we're always nervous about that first moment in which we're going to start interacting with our students, no, because they are new people, because they are new people that we don't know, because we don't know what their reaction that it's going to be. All right. So imagine students that are doing this exercise in front of their partners, in front of their classmates, at the beginning, in the first stage of the this contest, and they are doing it in the classrooms in front of their students, and they are not afraid of making mistakes, and then they see that other students are doing the same process, and they don't care about making mistakes. All right. And yes, we know that this is a competition. We know that students want to win, but at the same time they are speaking in public, and this is, imagine speaking in public at the district, or at the last stage of the third district spelling bee, that is going to be in front of like 100 people, and people they don't know. They have their parents in front, they have their teachers that are like willing them willing the students to win, and then, well, they have a lot of pressure, no? But imagine how important it is, or for the future of this student, to participate in a spelling bee. Next time that this person has to have a presentation in front of other students, when this person starts working and has to have a presentation in front of their co-workers, this is going to be very useful for students, no? And this is a very good exercise, and I think that this is like the best of a spelling bee, right? Our students are learning or how to speak in public, and they are like facing that pressure, and they are doing it in the right way. Okay, so based on this, or after that being said, we're going to try to integrate how we can like work with the word lists that we have for the third district spelling bee, and teach pronunciation at the same time, and teach vocabulary, and then create contexts for our students, and all these things, right? So we're going to share with you, but for those who are just joining us and have didn't participate in the previous Facebook live that we had, remember that you find this material going to Red Academica. Then you look for the spelling bee. You will find my partners are going to share with you the link in a moment below, and you will find the word lists, the rules, and all the process that we're gonna have for this spelling bee this year, 2020. All right. So our invitation is like, okay, we can teach vocabulary, but the pronunciation, sorry, but the third district spelling bee can be a very, very important tool in that process. All right. So now we're gonna start talking about the strategies, no? And probably the most common strategy that we use when we're teaching or when we're learning pronunciation is drilling, no? It's like we by repetition, no? The teacher pronounces, then we repeat, or this is like the way that we were taught in the past. Sometimes this is the way that we learn, and it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Yes, drilling is important. Drilling also helps creating self-confidence in people. If they know that they're producing the sounds properly because they're following you as a teacher or they're following your model, then they will feel more confident when producing the sounds, right? And drilling, yes, we drill phrases like when we are teaching readings and farewells to our students, like good morning or hello or how are you, right? So in this case, we're drilling, no? And the students are repeating all the time, and they are following us when they produce the sounds. But well, it doesn't mean that drilling cannot be integrated with other ways to teach pronunciation, right? And how can we do it, or why is drilling important? So sometimes people say like, no, don't use drill, and in the spelling bee people are just repeating words and they're just memorizing. But why should we drill? Well, here we have 4 reasons why drilling is important. No, we have drilling is essential for pronunciation practice. Drilling helps with the automatization of memory and memorization of language chunks. Drilling can be seen as a step towards fluency. All right, drilling is drilling, if done correctly, can work well. So it doesn't mean that we cannot have drilling as part of our teaching pronunciation practices. But how can we integrate it? So we're gonna with other strategies. So we're gonna show you some other strategies that you might find useful to teach pronunciation as well. And I'm sure that most of these strategies have been used by you in a certain way. But our purpose today is like to show you how we can integrate these different strategies. All right. So let's think about visual aids, okay, and how could we integrate drilling with visual aids. So in the last Facebook live we had, we were showing you this activity that is, and remember that we also share with you this material. My partners are going to share with you the links to find this material or worksheets. So visual aids, and we say like, okay, for example, here the student has to write the word, has to draw it, and has to use it in a context, or has to create a sentence or a phrase using that vocabulary. All right, and look, this is like part of drilling as well, because the student has to repeat the word in many different or in different times to to do this exercise. All right, so let's imagine that the word is cat, and then the student has this drawing, and then the student is reading the word, and then it's repeating, or it's drawing the word, or it's, for example, using it in a context, and it's saying, for example, I love my cat, and then it's drawing a cat, and then the student is like getting familiar with this vocabulary in a different way, but it's also drilling it and it's repeating the pronunciation of this word, and when it's creating the sentence, is producing the sounds of these other words that belong to this sentence in the exercise. Okay, so how can we integrate visual aids with the word lists? So for example, in the word lists for primary school or for secondary school, you might find animals, right? So you can like say, okay, we're going to use this word that belongs to the word list, that belongs to what I'm teaching my students, and then we're gonna start working with the word lists in a more meaningful way. Okay, so that the student doesn't have to learn the word, repeat it, and pronounce it, and that's it. No, we are doing like other activities that integrate everything. Remember that the word lists, we're gonna go a little bit back on this presentation to talk about the word lists more, because remember that all the words that belong to these word lists were taken from the English suggested curriculum for preschool and primary school, from some international examinations. For example, in the case of primary school, we looked for vocabulary and expressions that belong to the English suggested curriculum for primary and preschool, and also A1 vocabulary that belongs to international examinations, and the material that we have created for you as well in the other strategies that we're implementing as part of the Plan Distrital de Segunda Lengua or Second District Plan. And for example, in Bachillerato A, or in this category that we have from 6th to 8th grades, we use the vocabulary that we have in or that you find in Way to Go, that you find in international examinations as well. And for Bachillerato B, or in this case, for the highest level or highest category that we have in our contest, we've looked for words in international examinations in the English curriculum. So all these vocabularies integrated to what we are suggesting you to implement at your schools or as part of your lesson plans and the contents and your institutional curriculums. All right, so that you look for a word or an expression, try to do it as part of your lesson, right? Maybe you can have a spelling exercise at the end of the class based on the vocabulary that you're teaching them, or based on the content that you're teaching them, right? Or the context of your class. So it does, if you're teaching them animals and they have to talk about what they like, what animals are their favorite ones, or what animal colors they like the best, or these kind of activities, you can integrate the spelling bee to what you're teaching, right? So they don't learn the words in an isolated way, but they do it in a more meaningful way. All right, so visual aids, right? We can use visual aids. Students can make or can draw the vocabulary. They can have, for example, vocabulary walls in the rooms. You can have an activity in which you tell them like, hey, since we are not going to school and then you're working at home, please start a vocabulary wall in your room, and we're gonna use these words, and then you have to draw them, and then you have to write a sentence using the word, and then the student is going to be in touch with this vocabulary in different moments of the day, right? And you know that students or some people are very visual, no, when learning. So this is going to be like a helpful way for them to learn the vocabulary that you find in the word lists. Okay, so for example, we were talking about drilling, no, and drilling being as the most common way in which we teach vocabulary. But what if we start implementing strategies like using Tik-Tok? All right, so we had the experience of a teacher, the teacher Norma from from a public school, and she was sharing with us in which she implemented the use of TikTok as part of her lessons, and especially these days that students are working at home. So what happens here? For example, we can use TikTok, and students, or if students don't have access to TikTok, they can record their voices, all right, or you can teach them some vocabulary, or you can ask them like, okay, we're gonna work with the vocabulary that you find in the first column of the words that are like 5 to 6 letters from the word lists in the spelling bee, and then you can assign them different words to different students, and then they have to produce a video like this. So we're gonna show you like an example here. Let's spell S-P-E-N-L. For example, so here Valerie was like creating a video with the word spell. This was like an example for you to see how students can use TikTok, and they can introduce the letters or edit the videos, and they can like implement TikTok as part of their learning process, right? They are using drilling, they are practicing the words from the spelling bee, but they are also like losing, or they are being more confident when speaking in front of a camera. No, speaking in front of a camera is not easy. No, if you ask students or teachers to speak in front of a camera, they're going to be like, no, but I feel embarrassed, I don't want to look, I look very funny when I'm speaking in front of a camera. But this is a way in which our students can start like feeling more confident when speaking in public. All right, so it doesn't mean that you have to use TikTok, but you can use other sources. You can ask them to create YouTube videos. You can ask them to record the videos with their cell phones, and then send them a video to you, like maybe practicing with one word, and then having the drawing, and then presenting the drawing, for example. If they don't have access to internet, you can work with the pronunciation wall in their rooms, and they can take a picture and they can send you the picture they have. They can record their voices pronouncing the words or doing the spelling exercise, or they can create a sentence and they can use the word within a sentence, and then they can share it with you, right? So there are many different ways in which we can like work with technology and with visual aids, in this case videos, and students are going to be like more motivated to speak in English. Here we have an example for teenagers as well, right? So it doesn't mean that we only can do this exercise with little kids, but we can also do it with teenagers. And you know that teenagers are now using this TikTok more and more. And as you were saying, or one person saying like, no, TikTok sucks. Yeah, but it depends on the way that you use the source. No, if you use YouTube for stupid things, well, it's gonna be stupid. But if you use YouTube for an academic purpose, or for a learning or teaching purpose, it's gonna be useful. So TikTok is the same thing. You can use TikTok in an academic purpose, and you can use it in a meaningful way for them. Okay, so it doesn't mean that we can only use this source with little kids. We can use it with teenagers. Here's an example. Sorry. Hobbit. H-O-B-B-I-E-S. Hobbit. For example, so here we had another example of how this application or this can be used. You know that TikTok gives the chance to like to change their voices, like to introduce different images or words or sentences in the video. So this is going to make them feel more comfortable than speaking just in front of a camera and doing the exercise. So they're exploring technology. They're learning how to use technology. They are noticing or realizing about the way technology can be useful for their learning process. Okay, so our invitation here is like, try to think about different strategies that you can implement. And of course, please let us know about other sources that you have used um, during this emergency that we are facing, and please leave them on your comments. Let us know how you're tackling this emergency and what sources you're implementing. All right. So another important or another strategy that it's really good for teaching pronunciation is the use of songs. No, and well, we usually use songs with little kids, or there are many sources that you can find. But well, songs are really important because students are learning, and you see they are drilling. No, they are repeating what the song says, but they are internalizing sounds. They are reading what the song or what the lyrics of the song is, and they are producing the sounds because they are listening, and this is like they're listening at the same time. And this is a very nice strategy because sometimes we know that we don't have English teachers, or in most of the schools we don't have English teachers in primary school. Yes, we have teachers that teach all the subjects, and they have to teach English as part of those subjects, right? So sometimes teachers say like, no, but I don't know English. How am I going to teach them English if I don't know how to produce English or pronounce English properly? So songs are very useful in that case, no? Because if you're a primary school teacher that don't know how to speak English, so what can you do? You can use a song. For example, in this case, you're teaching them the days of the week, and the days of the week is a topic that you find in the word lists for the spelling bee for primary school. So here you have like a way. You say like, okay, they have to learn the word Thursday, for example, in the spelling bee word list. So, but are you going to teach them only Thursday? No, of course, you are teaching them the days of the week in your lessons. So, how can I do it if I don't know how to pronounce this word correctly? So, these words correctly. So, you can use a video, you can use a song, you can like sometimes people say like, no, but we don't have internet at school, how can we do it? So you can download these videos at home, and then you can play them in the classroom using a video beam. Or if you don't have a video beam but you have a tape recorder with a USB, so you can download the song, and then you can play it, and then you can have a poster. And you can also ask your students to help you to create a poster, or in the English corner that you have in your classroom. So there are different strategies when we don't have internet connection that we can use when using songs. Yes, but songs are very important, okay, when teaching pronunciation, not only for young learners, but also for teenagers and for adults. Remember that we sometimes find people or students that say like, no, they speak really good English, and then we ask them like, how did you learn, or where did you learn English? And they're like, no, listening to music. I was just like listening to songs. I like reading songs. I like learning the lyrics, and they have excellent pronunciation because they learned by using songs. And so this is like a way in which we can integrate um, songs as part of this teaching pronunciation. And remember that when we're working with a song, we're teaching them reading, listening, speaking, and all the skills, right? So another strategy that we can integrate with this uh, pronunciation teaching, we can use tongue twisters, right? So this might work with little kids, and also with teenagers, right? And this is an exercise that they like. Yes, remember that when when we listen to foreigners or English native speakers speaking in Spanish, then we notice that they don't produce some sounds, no? And for example, it is very difficult for them to produce the the sound r, No, for example, when they say carro, they say like carro. All right. So it is difficult because those sounds don't exist, or they don't produce these sounds that often in their languages, right? So it's the same for us as English learners. So there are many sounds that are not produced in Spanish that we have to teach them, and the tongue twister is a very nice tool we can use to teach them pronunciation, because we're teaching them not only a specific sound but also to be fluent, right? To speak with a fast pace. So, for example, let's think about this tongue twister. We have the fat cat sat on the rat with the hat, right? So here you're teaching them this sound. Remember that it's very difficult to teach them the symbols, and it's like not necessary to teach them the symbols, but if you want to teach them in an explicit way, it is okay. But let's imagine that we have the picture of the cat, that students learn and created a sentence with the cat, and then you teach them this tongue twister that involves a cat, or where a cat is involved. So what if we ask them to create their own tongue twisters? What if we have some words that have similar sounds in the word lists, and then we start like asking them to create a tongue twister with 3 or 4 words that they find in the word lists that we have for the category, right? So the tongue twisters are very useful when teaching pronunciation, and there are many websites or many YouTube videos that where you can find specific sounds. Here on this presentation, we're gonna show you the video that you see, or here you have the link. We're gonna share this PowerPoint presentation with you so that you can learn how to use tongue twisters and how to create your tongue twisters as well. So remember that this is like another strategy that you can implement in your classroom, like teaching them with tongue twisters. Another strategy, minimal pairs, right? So again, words that are written in a very similar way but are pronounced in a different way, in a very very minimal difference, right? So for example, here you have a web page. Its name is sheepersheep.com, and here you have different examples of minimal pairs. Here you have one that is, for example, the use of the short vowel and the long vowel. So when you produce the sound, for example, sheep, and you produce the sound chip, right? Or heat, hit, ill, ill, receive, sieve, leave, and live, right? So this is like a way in which you can start teaching your students those differences, and you can have some examples from the word lists in the spelling bee, and then you can find like similar words, minimal pairs, and then you can start working with them, or creating their own minimal pair wall, or something that they can like start using in the classroom or at home to produce these sounds properly. This web page is very useful because here you find for all the minimal pair exercises that you find on this web page, there is a tongue twister at the end. So for example, here students have to identify in what words we produce this sound, and in which ones we produce this sound, and then they have to produce the tongue twister. These six silly sisters are sweet to meet, right? So they have to see the difference when you say these and six silly sisters, sweet and meat, all right? Meat. So you can start teaching them these little details about pronunciation patterns using this web page, all right? So this is like another way in which you can promote the pronunciation learning. Games. We can use games. remember that in our previous Facebook Live, we used games as part of the strategies, and we shared with you some web pages that are very useful for you because students can work on phonics. For example, young learners, they can use these web pages as part of their pronunciation learning. And here, for example, in this source that you find on the screen, or that you see on the screen, you find like the way students can relate letters with sounds. No, there are others in which they have to record their voices, or they have to repeat, or they have to match specific vowel sounds with the specific words. So there are many web pages that you can find. Remember that we shared these ones with you on the link that we shared along with the material that you find for the spelling bee. You will find all these web pages, and also worksheets. Yes, for those who say like, no, but my students don't have internet access. What can I do? So why not using these games that you find here as part of a worksheet that you can create. For example, let's think about this worksheet. Um, let's ask them to have the vocabulary wall, and they do something similar to what you see on the screen, and then they start creating cards with the letters and with the words, and then they start playing on the walls, like connecting, or they can ask their brothers, their sisters. Maybe they can record a video like showing the way they connected different letters with different sounds. Okay, so there are many different strategies that you can use, uh, and games is one of the most like meaningful for students, especially for young learners. It doesn't mean that we can use games with teenagers, but think about like what games we can use. Please share with us below on the comments, like what games have you implemented. Remember that all the sources that you share with us and our partners are going to share our email addresses with you, so that you can start sharing with us material, and then we can like see all the ideas that you have, because we know that you have many games that you have used with your students in class that have been like meaningful, that you select, or projects that you implemented at your schools or with some of your grades at schools, and share with us that information. So games as part of teaching pronunciation is also a very nice tool. All right, and finally we have the dictionary. No, well, it's like for teenagers is like a very nice tool, especially dictionaries online that we find on the internet, because we have the Merriam-Webster, we have Cambridge dictionaries, Macmillan, Oxford, word reference. We have many dictionaries that you can find online. You are the ones who decide which one works better for your students, but our recommendation is ask your students to explore the vocabulary that you find on the word lists of the spelling bee, right? Because, for example, here let's continue with the example of the cat, right? So let's think about, like, they look for this word, they can click on this little speaker that you find, or this icon, and then they can listen to the word properly. They have sometimes different accents, like British accent. They have American accent. They have, in some dictionaries, they have other accents as well. So they see the meaning of the word in an example. They have also like sentences in which the word is used in a different way. Remember that sometimes we have words that work as an adjective or as a noun. So they can see different ways in which this word, or different functions that this word has. So you see, here, here dictionaries are also a very helpful tool to teach pronunciation, and you're gonna make sure that the students are producing the sounds properly. And sometimes we as teachers, when we are teaching a lesson and or when we're planning a lesson and we don't know how to pronounce one word, then what we do? We go to the dictionary and then we check that we make the correct pronunciation. So let's start promoting the same thing with our students. And what if the students don't have access to the online dictionaries because they don't have internet? You can share examples with them. If you have or if you are being in touch with their parents on WhatsApp, you could, for example, like show them a picture of an example of what they would find in a website or in a dictionary online, and then they can start creating their own dictionaries. They can work on a Word document, and then they can have a picture of the word or an example, or and then they can like write different sentences in which the word is used. So you can, and you can use the word lists of the spelling bee for that purpose. You can ask them like to go to the word list and then start a dictionary, and this is something that is going to be more meaningful for them because they're learning the vocabulary in a context. There are many other different strategies that we can use, and we are sure that you have many nice ideas. I was speaking to a teacher yesterday, and she was telling me, Diego, what about using stories? For example, remember that we have my ABC English kit that was delivered by the Ministry of Education in some schools, or you can find it on the Colombia Pendant website as well. And then there you find a digital material and the physical material as well. You find the stories. You have, for example, you can ask your students to create a story. This teacher was telling me yesterday, like, why not asking our students um, to create a story based on the words that we have in the word lists. Okay, so take 5 different words and then create a story. So let's work with students' creativity as well. All right, so that's another way. So people, let's wrap it up because, well, we time's up, and then we have to close this or finish this presentation. But important um, important conclusions that we have after this presentation is pronunciation is more important than it seems to be and has always been acknowledged, that it is a fundamental part of one's oral ability in the target language. So remember that we have to start giving more importance to pronunciation practice as part of our lesson plans to promote pronunciation. And also when students ask us like, a teacher, I want to practice on my own, what strategies can you give me? So then you can include pronunciation as part of their learning process. Okay. Another conclusion, the third district spelling bee word lists can be adapted to your teaching practice, since the words and expressions were taken from the English suggested curriculum for primary and secondary school, as well as materials such as Way to Go, Know Now, and some international tests or examinations. All right, so remember, it's not only asking your students to memorize and learn how to pronounce these words, but doing it in a more meaningful way is going to be really helpful for your students. All right, so they don't learn isolated words. Integrate the third district spelling bee word lists to your teaching contents, to your lesson plan. All right. Number 3, students need intensive contact with good pronunciation models in the beginning of the learning process. So if we are not teaching them pronunciation properly, then we are not doing it the right way, because students are going to start producing sounds in the wrong way. All right, and after this is going to be very difficult for them to correct. And finally, the goal of teaching pronunciation is to enable students to become not perfect pronouncers of English, but intelligible, all right? Communicative and confident users of spoken English for whatever purpose they need. So, people, we the, the purpose here is not to sound like a native speaker. The important thing here is that we can send the message that we want to send, that people understand what we are trying to say, all right? That communication is not broken, right? So that's what we have to promote with our students, that they feel confident speaking in English, all right? So this is like some of the conclusions. If you want to share, as I was saying before, if you want to share some other conclusions that you have after this workshop with us on the comments below, that would be really helpful. And also remember that you can uh, share with us activities or games or websites or resources that you know are good for learning pronunciation or teaching pronunciation to our emails, and we're gonna be glad to share that material with you. Remember that on Red Academica you will find different material for the third district spelling bee that is gonna be really helpful for your classes. All right, so thank you very much for being with us today. We're very glad to keep in touch with you. We know that this is like a nice way in which we can keep in touch with you teachers, with all the educational community, and I'm sure that these workshops you will find them really helpful, and we gave you many ideas for teaching pronunciation and its importance. And remember that on Tuesday next week we will have another workshop on how to teach vocabulary, or let's learn vocabulary and expressions in English. Remember that this is going to happen on Tuesday next week, May the 5th, and we will share with you other strategies or different strategies that you can use when teaching pronunciation, and how to integrate the material or the word lists from the spelling bee with these strategies. All right, so people, thank you very much, teachers. We hope that you found this presentation useful. Please keep like sharing this video with other teachers. We know that most teachers are like having virtual classes, or they have many things to do these days, or maybe, well, at home we have many things to do as well. So please invite other teachers to join us on our next workshop, to watch the previous Facebook Live and this one if they haven't, so that they can get more familiar with what the spelling bee is and how they can teach vocabulary and its pronunciation using the third district spelling bee. All right, so thank you very much for sharing your experiences, for sharing all your anecdotes, for sharing your ideas and material. All right, so I think that's all for today. And well, thank you very much, Juan Felipe, Nancy, Liliana. Thanks for joining us. Luz Maria Velasquez, thank you for being with us. And yes, we're gonna meet. We're gonna meet on Tuesday next week for our next workshop. Uh, yes, we know that you would like to have more interaction. The thing here is that, well, it's not that easy on Facebook, but we're gonna try like we're trying to make these workshops better every time. So all the recommendations are welcome. Thank you, Sandra, Nelly Sanchez, for your comment. It was really important contribution. thank you very much. And Nicole Butrago, thanks for joining us. Oscar Moreno, thank you. Thank you for being with us. We're gonna meet at 10 a.m. again. Well, we depend. You know that Red Academica is like sharing a lot of material, and we're having like the Filbo as well, and writers and different people like having workshops and sharing experiences with you and having Facebook lives with you. So we depend on it depends on the schedule, but so far we know that the next workshop will happen at 10 a.m. Tuesday next week. Okay, we will let you know. Remember that we're sharing this invitation for our next workshop to your email addresses, institutional email addresses, and also on Facebook, on Red Academica, on WhatsApp groups. So please help us sharing all this information with with uh, with other teachers. Virginia Rios Entre Nubes School, thank you for joining us. Faridi Canyaveral, this workshop was has been so helpful. Thank you, and thank the colleagues who have shared great ideas. Thank you, people, for sharing your ideas as well, because teachers find it really useful, and students as well. Patricia Sanchez, thank you very much. Paola Pedrosa, thank you for joining us. Adriana Carolina says, I enjoyed a lot these academic spaces. Thanks, Diego, for your time. Well, this is like a part of our teamwork. Uh, we are a team at the Secretary of Education, Luisa Martinez, Marta Galvez, which is our coordinator, Daniela Aristizabal, uh, Alexandra Marin, also Jaime Benavides, who's the person in charge of the Red Academica and social media and all the communications and media in our department, that is the science, technology, and educational media. So at the Secretary of Education. So on behalf of the Secretary of Education as well, our director at the management. So thank you very much. Okay, we hope that you find all this material helpful. Goodbye, Livardo. Have a nice Tuesday, everyone. And well, remember that you can keep on like sharing the material that you find on Red Academica, all the other videos about Filbo, about all the sharing with you. If we have more and more people joining us, that's really helpful. So thank you very much. See you on Tuesday. All right. Goodbye. Take care.